Hello, everyone. Good morning. No, probably good afternoon or good evening, maybe, live with Dr. Mom. This is my Moving Forward series. I am an entrepreneur, businesswoman, blogger now, I guess you could say, grandma, mom, um, lots of things, bodybuilder, house flipper, now new RVer. So anyway, I have been sort of out of commission for a while. I ended up flipping my house, selling it, getting an RV, learning about the RV, traveling to Kentucky, and now I'm in Minnesota. So I haven't been checking in regularly, and I apologize for that. I said that I was going to do that, and so now I'm trying to get back online every day. It's just sort of coming together again. So we have been covering, I'm going to get right to it, this particular series about moving forward in your life. One of the one of the strong principles in moving forward, in my opinion, what has always helped me is having a strong foundation, um, professional development, and now I'm almost forgetting everything. Let's see. Goal setting. So goal setting second, professional development. Studying is important. I am a Christian, so not to say that I'm pushing that on anyone. But I do enjoy becoming empowered from other women's stories, and whether they're women of the Bible or other women in general, and there's a lot in the Bible that are not Christian women that are converted, because of their story. But I enjoy reading about women and empowering other women through these stories. So we are following Bible study. I've been into it. Let's see, I'm at 24, although I've probably been 10 days of not doing it or so. And so we kind of followed this Jean Syswerda is the author of it. We followed the way she wrote it. It's really following the lineage of Christ. We started with Adam and Eve, kind of went through their story and, what that entailed. It had a lot to do with Eve, Eve and Adam eating from the forbidden fruit because they wanted to know more, have more wisdom. Then we talked about Sarah and Abraham. Sarah was older. She was barren and she was sad. And so God told her, I am going to give you a son, bless you with a son. But she was in her 90s and she kind of laughed about it and didn't believe him. So then the next person is Hagar, which is her handmaiden. And so she had Hagar lay with Adam and conceive a son instead of waiting for God's blessing. Caused a bunch of problems, as you might think, right? Hagar was later turned out, her and her son, into the desert, and God blessed them later. And Sarah did eventually have a son. That's where our story kind of starts. And then we go down to Lot's wife. That story was sort of about, God was going to, Sodom was being burned, and Lot was a man that was true to God. And so he had warned him and his wife and children to get out of the city and not look back. Well, his wife looked back. So we know in that case she was turned to a pillar of salt. Rebecca was married to Abraham's son Isaac, and it was sort of a divine meeting is what that story is about. Then Rachel and Leah were sisters. They were married to the same man. That story is about kind of how Rachel was more beautiful. Leah was not as beautiful, but she was able to produce more sons, and Rachel actually died early on. And then we talked about Tamar, daughter-in-law of Judea. That's another story about how she actually wasn't able to bear children, but later on did with her father-in-law. Kind of tricked him into it. Potiphar's wife had to do with Joseph, if you remember, and she kind of was trying to get Joseph to go to bed with her, and he ran, and she told lies about him and got him into trouble. Then we talked about the mothers of Moses. So he had a birth mother and then an adoptive mother, Jochebed and the Pharaoh's daughter. And then Miriam was his older sister. We talked about her. Rahab, Deborah and Jael. They were actually warriors, and Deborah was a judge. In fact, a pretty kick butt woman, if you want to ask me. She was a judge and warrior, and actually freed the Israelites from 40 years of bondage because of a war that they had. Jael actually put a tent peg through the leader of the opposing army's head when he was hiding from them. Delilah was with Samson. She betrayed him, had his hair cut. Naomi and Ruth were lost their husbands. Naomi was the mother-in-law, and Ruth followed her and later married Boaz. All of these women have something to do with the lineage, and later King David came from this lineage. Then there's Hannah and Michal, Abigail, the women of Endor, Bathsheba. Bathsheba was married to King David, and remembers he saw her on the roof, and her husband died because of being put in the war in the front lines. So anyway, this is the wise women of Abel. Let's see. So Tamar, the daughter of King David, we also read about that story. That was 23. And now we're talking about the wise women of Abel, Beth, Maacah. So we are on number 24, and I'm going to try to be more on here every day for you. So this is 2 Samuel 20, 14 through 22. The wise woman of Abel, Beth, Maacah. This was her character. Rather than passively waiting for someone else to save her city, she had the wisdom and courage to act quickly and decisively. So another woman who was out of the box in those days, courageous and had wisdom. All the men of Israel deserted David to follow Sheba, son of... Now, towards the end of King David's life, he had a pretty rough time, and it was after he actually married Bathsheba, although she was married to another man. He had everything to do with her husband's death, and so he had a pretty rough time after that. So, but the men of Judea stayed by their king. David said to Abishai, "Take your master's men and pursue him, or he will find fortified cities and escape from us." So all the mighty warriors went out under the command of Abishai. They marched out of Jerusalem to pursue Sheba, son of Bichri. Sheba passed through all the tribes of Israel to Abel, Beth, Maacah, and all the troops with Jacob came and besieged Sheba and Abel, Beth, Maacah. I'm assuming that's a city. They built a siege ramp up to the city, and it stood against the outer fortifications. While they were battering the wall to bring it down, a wise woman called from the city, "Listen, listen, are you Job?" "I am," he answered. She continued, We are the peaceful and faithful in Israel. You are trying to destroy a city that is a mother of Israel." Job replied, "This is not the case." I have babies knocking at the door. A man named Sheba, son of Bichri, from the hill country of Ephraim, has lifted up his hand against the king, against David. Hand over this one man, and I will draw from the city. The woman said to Joab, "His head will be thrown to you from the wall." Then the woman went to all the people with her wise advice, and they cut off the head of Sheba, son of Bichri, and threw it to Joab. So So he sounded the trumpet, and his men dispersed from the city, each returning to his home. Okay, so the wise woman's life and times. When Joab's men gathered outside of Abel, Beth, Maacah, a wise woman braved the warriors gathered outside and bargained with Joab for the life of Abel's inhabitants. So here we go again, a woman who is standing up for the people. No doubt she and others like her were part of the reason that Abel was known as a city that is a mother in Israel, a place to go for answers to life's difficult questions. Its inhabitants must have been shrewd as well as wise to gain such notoriety. War was a regular feature of life for the Israelites, so much that freedom from war gained special notice in Scripture. Battles between opposing armies were often waged in valleys or other wide open spaces. Inhabitants of embattled areas would flee to the nearest walled and fortified city. To gain entrance and control of such a city, armies would gather outside the city walls and prevent anyone from going in or going out. When water and food became scarce or ran out altogether, the city's inhabitants would be forced to surrender. When a city surrendered, its populace could look forward to one of the two consequences: death or slavery. Often the deprivation and horror of a siege were preferable to surrender. Depending on how well the city was prepared, a siege could last anywhere from days to weeks to months. An army of Egypt besieged the city of Ashdod for an incredibly 29 years. Wow. The longest siege record in the Bible. That's crazy, isn't it, you guys? Wow. Occupants of fortified cities spent much time in preparation for sieges. They strengthened the walls, gathered and stored extra food, and figured out a way to gather and store large amounts of water. Some cities built long underground tunnels to allow water to flow freely into the city. Builders of these tunnels took care to disguise the water's source, for armies could then easily cut it off or use it to gain entrance into the city. Sometimes huge cisterns were dug within the city walls to catch and store rainwater. The attacking army outside a city's wall would move vast amounts of earth to build ramps to the upper parts of the city wall. From these ramps, they would then use battering rams to attempt to break down the wall in that area, all the while defending themselves against the arrows and rocks and darts of the city inhabitants. Job's army built such a ramp and battered the wall of Abel in order to capture it and the rebel Sheba, who had taken refuge within. But rather than throwing down arrows or rocks, the wise women of Abel shouted words of conciliation, and in doing so, preserved innocent lives. So there again, she saved her city. So that's cool, right? This is going to be short today because I am running out of time again. And my one computer just died. So dang it. See if I can find it. See if I can find it. Okay, so this is the wise women of Abel, Beth, Maacah. The second of two wise women portrayed in 2 Samuel lived in a fortified city in northern Israel. More straightforwardly than the story of the wise women of Tekoa. This narrative depicts what must have been typical leadership activities of women in this accepted position against the larger political tensions of David's reign. Hostility between the people of Judea, David's tribe of origin in the south, and the people of Israel, the 10 northern tribes, services following David's suppression of his son Absalom's revolt. A Benjamite, Shelba, son of Bishira, capitalized on the sentiment with a call for the northerners to forsake their share in David. That is, to rebel or secede. The scene is thus set for Sheba's fight to the north and refuge in Abel, where David's general Joab chases him down. As Joab's forces battle the city wall, the wise woman calls out to him for negotiations. So this is a little easier to understand, I feel like. His immediate response suggests his familiarity with her position and his acknowledgement of its claim to authority. Her next speech is a masterpiece of manipulation, using a proverb, unfortunately not fully recoverable from a corrupt text. She rhetorically links her city's reputation for wise counsel with her own claim to be one of the peaceable and faithful in Israel. She then accuses Joab of seeking to destroy a city that is a mother in Israel, and demands why he would swallow up the heritage of the Lord. Reference to a city as mother indicates its preeminent position among a cluster of smaller towns. Here, however, the women's rhetoric suggests, as well as a wider metaphorical connotation to mother in Israel, used by a woman who was no doubt a mother as well as being wise, ties back to her self-reference as a peaceful and faithful citizen of a city known for wise counsel. So they're comparing her to the attributes of the title of Deborah, the judge that we just talked about. At the same time, it anticipates by means of parallelism the theologically frightened heritage of the Lord. Joab can only defensively backpedal. For be it from me, far be it that I should swallow up or destroy. Joab then asks for the head of Sheba, perhaps unwilling to risk demanding all the Bicharites, who would remain in safety behind Abel's walls. The wise woman accedes to this request with apparent confidence in her people's subsequent agreement. I mean, geez, we're pretty lucky to live in the times that we do, because sounds like they have to cut off the head of one person and hand it over. Like that of her counterpart in Tekoa, the story of a wise woman attests to what must have been a regularized public role for women, at least though through the early period of the Israelite monarchy. We have no further record of such female leadership after the time of David. Although the increasing political encroachment of the monarchy may have undercut the wider power of the village wise women, it is unlikely, however, to have eliminated their authority among their own people. Rather, the interests of the male court historians became focused more on urban life and male leaders than in life in rural communities. That's interesting. So, okay. So that's kind of the end of the reign of women in leadership as far as that goes. Although today there's a lot more, right? A lot more women in leadership. Okay, with that, I think I'm going to call it kind of short. I was trying to go an hour, but I'm nowhere near that now. But I'm going to go ahead and do our devotion for today because I haven't been doing it. This is the 23rd of June already. Oh, it's been crazy. Let my love stream through you, washing away fear and distress. A trusting response includes me in your thoughts as you consider strategies to deal with the situation. My continual presence is a promise, guaranteeing that you never have to face anything alone. My children teethe on the truth that I am always with them, yet they stumble around in a stupor, unaware of my loving presence all around them. How that grieves me. When you walk through a day in trusting dependence on me, my aching heart is soothed. Gently bring your attention back to me whenever it wanders away. I look for persistence rather than perfection in your walk with me. Psalms 52:8, Deuteronomy 31:6, and Ephesians 4:30. So with that, my friends, I'm sorry, but this is going to be short. It's going to be a little short today, but I'm going to be back tomorrow, and I'm going to try to do one. I'm trying to do one every day the rest of the week. I was doing it at 1 o'clock, but I'm going to go ahead and just get it on here until I get steady again. This seems to be working well. The internet works well in here. So it's just a matter of my schedule. So bless you all. Much love. Have a wonderful, blessed day and the rest of your week. enjoy your family and friends. So, love you much. Bye.